Sign the papers and stop standing in the way of our baby. Those were the first words my husband's pregnant mistress said to me at the divorce conference. She said them across a polished walnut table on the 42nd floor of a downtown Chicago law office, in front of a retired judge, 2 attorneys, a legal assistant, and my husband, Ethan Caldwell, who was still wearing the silver watch I had bought him when he became a regional vice president at Halcyon Therapeutics. Sloan Mercer sat beside him in a cream-colored dress that hugged the small curve of her stomach. She had one hand resting protectively over the baby and the other wrapped around a glass of sparkling water. Her blonde hair was swept over one shoulder. Her engagement ring finger was bare, but her smile already looked like she owned everything that had once belonged to me. My house. My husband. My future. Even my humiliation. I was seated across from them with the proposed divorce settlement open in front of me and a black fountain pen between my fingers. I did not shake. That seemed to disappoint her. My client is not preventing anyone from having a child, my attorney, Denise Harper, said calmly. We are here to review the financial disclosures and discuss the division of marital property. Sloan leaned back. Of course. I just think some women have trouble accepting when a marriage has already ended. Ethan stared at the table. That hurt more than her words. He had spent 9 years telling me that he would defend me against anyone. Yet when the woman carrying what he believed was his child insulted me in public, he studied the grain in the wood as though it required his full concentration. The retired judge serving as mediator removed his glasses. Ms. Mercer, you are not a party to this divorce. I will ask you not to interfere. I'm part of the situation, she replied. You are not part of the legal proceeding. Her smile tightened. Ethan finally looked at me. Claire, can we just get through this? His voice carried the exhausted impatience of a man who believed my pain had become an administrative inconvenience. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 39 that winter, and until 6 months earlier, I had believed my marriage was one of the strongest things in my life. I was a corporate attorney at a Chicago firm specializing in acquisitions and compliance investigations. Ethan managed Midwest operations for Halcyon Therapeutics, a fast-growing pharmaceutical company headquartered in Boston. From the outside, we looked successful in the comfortable, polished way people trusted without examining too closely. We owned a renovated brick home in Lincoln Park. We drove sensible luxury cars. We had season tickets to the Chicago Symphony that we used 4 times a year and pretended we would use more often. We hosted Thanksgiving for both families. We adopted 2 dogs, Walter and June, after Ethan found them together at a rescue event and said separating them would be cruel. For years, that story felt like proof of his character. A man who refused to separate 2 frightened dogs could not possibly abandon his wife. That was what I believed. I had confused isolated kindness with permanent loyalty. The truth announced itself slowly. Ethan began coming home late every Wednesday. At first, he blamed conference calls with Halcyon's West Coast team. Then it became dinners with regional directors, strategy sessions, product launch emergencies, and delayed flights from cities he had supposedly visited so often that I could no longer remember which excuse belonged to which week. His phone started following him into the shower. He turned it face down during dinner. He changed the password after using the same 6 digits for nearly a decade. Then there was the perfume. It was sweet, floral, and young. It clung to the collars of his shirts and the passenger seat of his car. The first time I mentioned it, he laughed. We test consumer products, Claire. Fragrances get sprayed all over the marketing floor. Halcyon sells medication. We also develop dermatology products. You came from a dinner, not a laboratory. He kissed my forehead as if I were being adorable. You cross-examine people for a living. You don't have to do it at home. That sentence stayed with me. At work, people paid me to notice inconsistencies. At home, my husband had trained me to feel guilty for seeing them. So I stopped questioning him. I started observing. I checked dates, not messages. I remembered names, not excuses. I noted the nights he came home distant and the mornings he became unusually affectionate. Guilt made him generous. After the worst weeks, flowers appeared on my desk, reservations appeared in my calendar, and jewelry appeared in small velvet boxes. He thought gifts erased patterns. They only confirmed them. The person who finally gave the betrayal a face was my former law school roommate, Maya Chen. She had joined Halcyon's legal department 2 years earlier and worked closely with the executive team. One Thursday night, while I was reviewing a contract at home, Maya sent me a message. I saw Ethan at Bavette's with someone from marketing. Blonde. Late 20s. They were not acting like coworkers. Are you okay? I read it 3 times. Walter was asleep against my foot. June was staring at me from the rug, waiting for the moment when I normally closed my laptop and took them outside. I remember the refrigerator humming. I remember rain tapping against the kitchen windows. I remember thinking that people imagined heartbreak as something loud. Mine was silent. It was the sound of every excuse Ethan had given me rearranging itself into the truth. The woman's name was Sloane Mercer. She was 28 and had transferred from Halcyon's Denver office to Chicago the previous year. Her online life was a carefully edited catalog of discipline and aspiration, early morning workouts, motivational quotes, business class flights, expensive blazers, rooftop cocktails, and captions about refusing to accept less than she deserved. I had met her at Halcyon's holiday party. She had walked up to me near the bar, complimented my dress, and asked how long Ethan and I had been married. Almost 9 years, I said. That's incredible. The way she said incredible made marriage sound like an antique achievement. Then she smiled. You're so elegant. Ethan always says you're very established. At the time, I assumed she was awkward. Later, I understood that she had been measuring me. She wanted to see whether I looked tired, insecure, or old enough to replace. The following Wednesday, Ethan told me he had a video conference with the San Francisco team. I followed him. I hated myself for doing it. I hated the secrecy, the adrenaline, and the cheapness of sitting in my car outside a restaurant in River North while snow gathered along the windshield. But I needed the truth without his interpretation attached to it. He arrived at 7:14. Sloane arrived at 7:21. He met her outside. His hand settled against the small of her back as naturally as it had settled against mine in hundreds of photographs. Inside the restaurant, they sat in a corner booth. She leaned toward him when she laughed. He touched her wrist. At one point, she placed her hand against his cheek and he closed his eyes. That was the moment my marriage ended. Not when they kissed. Not when he lied. It ended when I saw the expression on his face. He looked relieved. Being with her felt like an escape from the life we had built together. I drove home before they left. I let Walter and June into the yard, poured a glass of wine, and sat at the kitchen island until Ethan arrived after midnight. He loosened his tie and gave me a tired smile. San Francisco is a disaster. I saw you. The smile vanished. He did not ask what I meant. That told me everything. Claire, I watched you walk into the restaurant with Sloane. His eyes moved toward the stairs, as though checking whether anyone else could hear us. We lived alone. Shame makes people behave as if betrayal has witnesses even when it does not. It isn't what you think. You had your hand on her back. She's going through a difficult time. She kissed you. His shoulders dropped. For a few seconds, he looked like a man considering which lie would require the least effort. Then he stopped pretending. It started a few months ago. How many? Does it matter? It matters to me. He rubbed both hands over his face. About 5. 5 months. During those 5 months, we had celebrated my birthday in Napa Valley. We had attended his sister's wedding. We had discussed renovating the upstairs bathroom. We had met with a financial advisor and increased our retirement contributions. He had continued building our future while privately replacing me inside it. Do you love her? I asked. He did not answer quickly enough. That isn't a difficult question. I care about her. Do you love her? I don't know what love means anymore. I almost laughed. People who betray you often become philosophers when simple words would make them accountable. An affair does not happen, Ethan. It is chosen. You chose it every time you deleted a message, invented a meeting, or came home and climbed into bed beside me. I know. No, you know you were caught. His expression hardened. You haven't been happy either. There it was. The shared responsibility defense. He listed my long hours. My tendency to bring work home, the weekends I had canceled plans because a client needed me, and the arguments we had postponed instead of resolving. Some of it was true. None of it explained Sloane. You could have left, I said. You could have told me you were lonely. You could have asked for counseling. I tried to talk to you. You complained. You did not confess. I didn't plan this. You planned every Wednesday. He slept in the guest room that night. Within 2 weeks, he moved into a furnished apartment in the West Loop. He told friends we were taking space. He told his parents we had grown apart. He told Halcyon's leadership nothing about Sloane, despite company rules requiring executives to disclose relationships with employees whose promotions or compensation they could influence. I filed for divorce after discovering that he had approved her appointment as director of regional brand strategy. He claimed the decision had been made by committee. I knew how committees worked when the most powerful person in the room wanted a specific answer. At first, Ethan approached the divorce with remorse. He said he wanted the process to remain respectful. He offered to let me stay in the Lincoln Park house. He said he would continue paying the mortgage until we reached an agreement. Then Sloane learned she was pregnant. Everything changed. Ethan stopped apologizing and started negotiating. The house was suddenly too valuable for me to keep. Our investment accounts needed to be re-examined. His company stock, which had been earned during the marriage, was supposedly tied to future performance and should not be considered marital property. His attorney sent a proposed settlement that treated our 9-year marriage like a temporary inconvenience. I would receive the house only if I refinanced within 60 days and waived any claim to 3 stock grants worth more than $700,000. Ethan would retain his retirement accounts, his company equity, and the West Loop condominium he had quietly placed under contract. That condominium was the first surprise. The second was that he had used $180,000 from a joint investment account as the deposit. He claimed the transfer had been an emergency business investment. My forensic accountant found the payment to a real estate escrow company within 48 hours. When Denise confronted his attorney, the language changed. It was no longer a business investment. It was temporary housing for the baby. That was why Sloane appeared at the mediation. She wanted to make the baby visible. She believed a pregnant stomach would transform financial misconduct into family necessity. Ethan had not warned me she would be there. I knew from his face when I entered the conference room. He looked embarrassed, but not enough to ask her to leave. Sloane made a performance of discomfort. She shifted in her chair, requested herbal tea, and whispered that stress was not good for the baby whenever the mediator questioned Ethan's financial disclosures. Then she began speaking directly to me. She said the Lincoln Park house was too large for one person. She said children needed stability. She suggested I could easily purchase another property because I had a successful career. The message was clear. She did not view me as the woman whose marriage she had helped destroy. She viewed me as an obstacle between her and the lifestyle she had selected. When the mediator asked whether both sides were prepared to sign the preliminary property agreement, Sloane placed her hand over her stomach and told me to stop standing in the way of their baby. I looked at Ethan. You brought her here to pressure me. She wanted to understand the process. She is not your attorney. She is carrying my child. And I am still your wife. Sloane gave a small laugh. Legally. Denise touched my arm under the table, warning me not to react. I did not need the warning. I had spent 14 years watching men destroy themselves in conference rooms because they mistook emotional control for weakness. I picked up the pen. Ethan exhaled. Sloane smiled. Then I signed only the acknowledgement confirming that I had received the proposed agreement. I closed the folder. I am not accepting the settlement. Ethan's face changed. Claire, we discussed this. You discussed it with your attorney. Then you hid money from me and brought your girlfriend to intimidate me. The money was for housing. The money was marital property. The baby needs somewhere to live. The baby does not need a $1.4 million condominium with a private elevator. Sloane's cheeks flushed. You have no idea what the baby needs. No. But I know what you want. She leaned toward me. Some women build careers because they could not build families. The room became completely still. Ethan whispered her name. Not as a reprimand. As a warning that she had said the quiet part too loudly. Sloane knew I had suffered 2 miscarriages. Ethan had told her. He had taken one of the most private wounds of my life and placed it in the hands of a woman who used it as a weapon. For the first time that day, my control nearly failed. I looked at my husband. Did you tell her? He did not answer. He did not have to. I stood, gathered my documents, and handed the pen back to the legal assistant. This mediation is over. Claire, Ethan said. I looked at him until he stopped. Then I turned to Sloane. You think pregnancy made you powerful in this room? It did not. It only made your cruelty more visible. I walked out before either of them could respond. The elevator ride to the lobby lasted less than 1 minute, but by the time the doors opened, my chest felt too tight to breathe. Outside, Chicago was covered in freezing rain. Taxis sprayed gray water across the curb. Office workers moved around me with umbrellas lowered against the wind. I reached the parking garage and unlocked my car. Claire. A man's voice came from behind me. I turned. Lucas Grant stood near the concrete column, beside my parking space. He had been Ethan's closest friend since college and the best man at our wedding. He was the kind of man who remembered birthdays, tipped servers too much, and disappeared whenever conflict required choosing a side. For months, he had sent me careful messages saying he was sorry things had become difficult. He had never asked what Ethan had done. Now his face was pale, and his coat was wet from the rain. What are you doing here? I knew about the mediation. Did Ethan send you? No, then move. Claire, please. I have nothing to say to you. I need to tell you something about Sloane. I opened the car door. If this is another request for me to make the divorce easier because Ethan is becoming a father, save it. It isn't. He stepped closer, then stopped as though afraid I might leave before he found the right words. I knew Sloane before Ethan did. I stared at him. How well? Lucas looked toward the garage entrance. Then he met my eyes. We were sleeping together. The rain struck the metal ramps above us. I felt the world narrow around his face. When? For almost 7 months. It ended after she started working closely with Ethan. Does he know? No, I gripped the car door. What does this have to do with me? Lucas swallowed. She contacted me after she found out she was pregnant. My anger shifted into something colder. What did she say? He reached inside his coat and took out his phone. She said the dates were complicated. Complicated how? She was still seeing me when she started seeing Ethan. I looked at the phone but did not take it. Lucas's voice dropped. Claire, the baby she says belongs to your husband may belong to me. He unlocked the screen and opened a message. The photograph showed an ultrasound. Underneath it, Sloane had written 2 sentences. Look at that forehead. Exactly like yours. Do not tell Ethan yet. I need time to decide which future makes the most sense. Lucas and I went to a coffee shop 2 blocks from the garage because neither of us trusted our hands enough to drive. The place was crowded with people escaping the freezing rain. Coats hung from chair backs. Milk steamed behind the counter. A group of college students argued about an exam near the window, unaware that the table beside them held the remains of 3 people's lives. Lucas ordered coffee and never touched it. I kept my coat on. Start at the beginning. He rubbed his palms together. I met Sloane at a healthcare marketing conference in Austin. That was about 18 months ago. She worked for a Denver consulting agency then. You were married. Lucas looked down. Separated. That is not the same thing. I know. His wife, Rebecca, had moved to Minneapolis after years of trying to save a marriage Lucas treated like a room he could leave whenever the conversation became uncomfortable. I had once believed Lucas was gentler than Ethan. I was beginning to understand that gentleness without courage could produce its own kind of damage. How long did the affair last? About 7 months. We met when I traveled for work. Sometimes she came to Chicago. Did Ethan know her through you? No. At least, I do not think so. She applied to Halcyon after hearing me talk about the company's expansion. I introduced her to a recruiter, not Ethan. That distinction seemed important to him. It was not important to me. When did she begin seeing Ethan? I cannot give you an exact date. She became less available around February. In March, she told me there was someone else. Ethan had first come home smelling like her perfume in April. The timeline fit too easily. Did you continue seeing her? Twice. While she was with Ethan? I did not know how serious they were. You knew she was involved with someone. Yes. And you did it anyway. Yes. He did not defend himself. That was more than Ethan had managed. Lucas opened a folder on his phone and slid it across the table. There were screenshots, hotel confirmations, photographs, and voice messages. Some had dates from before Sloane joined Halcyon. Others were much more recent. A photograph taken in a hotel mirror showed Sloane wearing Lucas's shirt. The date was 12 weeks earlier. Sloane had told Ethan she was 10 weeks pregnant. I scrolled to the next image. It was the ultrasound photograph I had already seen. The message beneath it was followed by a reply from Lucas. Does Ethan know we were together? Sloane had answered, he knows what he needs to know. Another message appeared 2 days later. He is thrilled. He thinks this fixes everything. Lucas had written, what if it is mine? Her response came 4 minutes later. Then we will handle it privately. He does not need to lose a child he already loves. I read the words again. What does handle it privately mean? I asked her. He played an audio message. Sloane's voice filled the small space between us. Lucas, stop panicking. Ethan is stable. He wants the baby. You are still trying to repair things with Rebecca, and you travel constantly. Biology is not the only thing that makes someone a father. Let Ethan believe. What makes everyone's life easier. The recording ended. I handed the phone back. Lucas looked sick. There is more. Of course there is. He showed me messages in which Sloane asked whether he would provide financial support if a test proved he was the father. In another, she complained that Ethan was taking too long to finalize the divorce. Then I saw a sentence that made my skin turn cold. Once Claire signs, I will have the condo and access to the stock. After that, the paternity question becomes manageable. I looked up. She knows the details of the settlement. Apparently. Ethan gave her confidential legal documents. I do not know. I did. He had either shown her the proposal or allowed her to dictate it. The humiliation at the mediation had not been spontaneous. Sloane had walked into that room knowing exactly what I was being pressured to surrender. Why are you telling me? Lucas stared through the window. Because I went to Ethan's apartment this morning. I planned to tell him. What stopped you? Sloane was there. They were arguing. About what? I could not hear everything. But she said you were refusing to cooperate and that he needed to make the financial situation unbearable for you. My fingers tightened around my cup. She said that? She said if he stopped paying the mortgage and challenged your claim to the stock, you would sign. I thought of Ethan asking me to get through the mediation. Not resolve it. Not understand it. Get through it. Did Ethan agree? He told her his attorney was handling the pressure. Lucas finally looked at me. That is when I realized he was not just being manipulated. He was helping her manipulate you. The distinction mattered. For a few hours after learning the baby might not be Ethan's, I could have made the mistake of seeing him as another victim. He was not. Sloane had lied to him. He had lied to me. Both truths could exist without canceling each other. What do you want from me? I asked. I want a paternity test. That is between you, Sloane, and Ethan. She will not agree unless she is forced. Then speak to an attorney. I have. And? My attorney says I may need to wait until the baby is born unless Sloane consents. But Ethan should know before he makes permanent decisions. He should. Lucas hesitated. I thought it would be better if he heard it from both of us. No, Claire, I am not standing beside you while you confess to sleeping with my husband's mistress. I am not responsible for making the truth easier for either of you. I understand. Do you? I leaned forward. You watched Ethan destroy our marriage. You knew Sloane had been involved with you, and you said nothing. You waited until she became pregnant and threatened your future before developing a conscience. His face tightened. That is fair. No. Fair would have been telling the truth before I spent months wondering what was wrong with me. I am sorry. Sorry is what people say when the consequences finally reach them. He absorbed that without argument. I stood. Send every original file to Denise. Do not edit, crop, or rename anything. Include the metadata and full message threads. You believe me? I believe evidence. What are you going to do? What I should have done when Ethan first lied. I buttoned my coat. I am going to stop treating this like a broken marriage and start treating it like an investigation. By 8 o'clock that night, Denise, my forensic accountant, and I were seated at the dining table in my Lincoln Park house. Walter lay under the table. June paced between the kitchen and the front window, sensing the tension. Denise reviewed Lucas's messages while the accountant, Sam Patel, examined the documents from Ethan's incomplete financial disclosure. This changes leverage, Denise said. It does not change the law, I replied. No, but it changes his judgment. A man hiding assets for a mistress may behave differently after learning she has been lying about paternity. I do not want to reconcile. I did not suggest it. I need everyone to understand that. Denise closed the message file. We understand. Sam turned his laptop toward us. The condominium deposit came from the joint investment account. That part is clear. But I found another transfer. The screen showed a payment of $96,000 to Mercer Brand Advisory LLC. Sloane has a consulting company? She registered it in Delaware 8 months ago. Halcyon employs her full-time. Yes. Who paid the money? Sam enlarged the transaction detail. The funds had come from a line of credit secured against our investment portfolio. The authorization carried Ethan's digital signature. What was the stated purpose? Strategic consulting. For whom? Sam opened the attached memorandum. The consulting work was supposedly related to a private medical investment partnership called Northline Ventures. I had never heard of it. Search the corporate records. I did. Northline Ventures was formed 5 months ago. Ethan is the manager. Denise looked at me. Did he disclose ownership? No, Sam shook his head. It is not in the financial affidavit. The room became very quiet. The pregnancy was not the only secret Ethan had hidden inside the divorce. He had created a company during our marriage, borrowed against marital assets, paid Sloane's shell company, and omitted all of it from sworn financial disclosures. That was not merely dishonest. Depending on what the funds had been used for, it could be sanctionable. Possibly worse. Can we trace where Sloane moved the money? I asked. Not without discovery or a subpoena. Then we request both. Denise nodded. And we seek an emergency order preventing further transfers. I looked toward the kitchen, where a framed photograph from our 7th anniversary still sat beside the wine rack. In the picture, Ethan was kissing my temple on a boat in Lake Michigan. His arms were around me. My eyes were closed. For months, I had wondered when he stopped loving me. Now I wondered whether that was the wrong question. Maybe love had not disappeared all at once. Maybe he had simply decided his desires deserved protection and I did not. File it tomorrow, I said. The next morning, Denise's litigation team prepared an emergency motion to freeze the line of credit, preserve the investment accounts, and prohibit either spouse from transferring marital assets outside ordinary living expenses. We included the condominium deposit, the undisclosed company, the payment to Sloane's entity, and the settlement proposal designed to make me waive claims before those assets were revealed. We did not include the paternity evidence. That was personal leverage, not financial evidence, and I refused to use an unborn child as a litigation tactic. By noon, the judge granted a temporary preservation order pending a hearing. At 12:17, Ethan called me. I let it ring. He called again. Then came a message. "What did you do?" I stared at the screen. For 9 years, he had known that I built legal cases for a living. He had simply never imagined I might build one against him. I replied, "I prevented you from spending more marital money without disclosure." His answer appeared almost immediately. "You are freezing funds needed for my child." I wrote, "Your child is not a financial exemption from the truth." The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, and returned. Then he called again. This time, I answered. "What is Northline Ventures?" He went silent. "Claire, it is complicated." Complicated is what dishonest people call facts they have not prepared to explain. It is an investment project. Funded by our assets. I intended to repay everything. You paid Sloane's company $96,000. She provided legitimate consulting. She works for Halcyon. This was separate. Did Halcyon approve it? Another silence. Ethan? No, did you disclose the relationship to your company? You know I did not. Did you disclose Northline to your attorney? I was going to. Before or after I signed away the stock? His voice sharpened. You are trying to destroy me because I left. No. I am trying to keep you from destroying me because you left. That is not what is happening. You brought the woman you cheated with to a confidential divorce mediation. She mocked my miscarriages using information only you could have given her. Then you expected me to surrender hundreds of thousands of dollars while you hid a company and moved money into her control. She should not have said that. But you told her. I was trying to explain what we had been through. You gave her my grief so she could understand you. That is not fair. Neither was burying 2 pregnancies and then watching you build a nursery with someone else. His breathing changed. For a moment, the anger disappeared from his voice. Claire, I never wanted to hurt you this badly. People love saying that after carefully selecting every action required to do it. He whispered my name. I ended the call. That evening, Lucas sent a new message. Sloane is planning a celebration Friday night at the Langham. Ethan's executives, clients, and several people from your firm are invited. I knew about the event. A junior associate had shown me the digital invitation earlier that day. A new beginning. Ethan and Sloane invite you to celebrate their growing family and the next chapter of their lives. It was not officially called an engagement party or a baby shower. Their relationship existed in an awkward space where Ethan was still married and Sloane wanted public recognition without public criticism. The guest list solved that problem. If enough respected people attended, the affair would be transformed into a love story. Maya called me after receiving her invitation. She invited half the company. Not the company. The people whose approval she wants. Are you going? No, you sound like you might. I said no. You say no like a lawyer when the final answer is still under review. I almost smiled. Has Halcyon's compliance team learned about Northline? Not from me. Do you know Patricia Ross? Chief Financial Officer. Why? She approved some of Ethan's regional budgets. Maya lowered her voice. Claire, what did you find? I cannot discuss it. You just asked whether the CFO approved something. I asked whether you knew her. Yes. She is careful and not easily intimidated. Good. After we hung up, I reviewed Lucas's files again. One receipt caught my attention. It was from a resort in Wisconsin, charged to a Halcyon corporate card. The date matched a weekend Ethan had told me he was attending a leadership retreat in Indianapolis. The hotel reservation listed Sloane as the second guest. The expense description read, Regional Dermatology Campaign Planning Session. I sent it to Sam. Within an hour, he found 4 similar charges embedded in Ethan's reimbursement records, totaling more than $31,000. Some had been approved under Ethan's executive authority. One carried Patricia Ross's electronic approval. That did not mean Patricia had knowingly authorized a romantic trip. High-level expense approvals often involved summaries rather than itemized records. But it meant Halcyon's money had entered the affair. Ethan's personal betrayal had become a corporate compliance problem. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Patricia through outside counsel. I did not threaten the company. I did not offer a dramatic story. I gave her attorneys the expense records, the Northline documentation, and evidence that Sloane had received outside payments from an executive who supervised her career. Patricia's attorneys asked whether I intended to publicize the information. I said no. I intended to preserve evidence and protect my financial rights. What Halcyon did was its responsibility. Patricia called me herself that afternoon. Her voice was controlled. Ms. Bennett, I appreciate your discretion. I am not doing this for Halcyon. I understand. Has Ethan been informed? Not yet. Then I suggest you secure your records before he is. That is already underway. She paused. There may be more than you know. What does that mean? I cannot discuss an internal review. You called me. I called to tell you that any documents relevant to your divorce will be preserved. That is not why you called. Another pause. You are right. Her tone lowered. I called because Friday's event is being held in a ballroom reserved through Halcyon's executive hospitality account. I closed my eyes. The company is paying for the party? The reservation was described as a regional investor dinner. The audacity was almost elegant. Ethan and Sloane planned to celebrate replacing me in a ballroom paid for by his employer, using an event code designed for investors, while pressuring me to surrender marital assets because they needed money for a baby. Will Halcyon cancel it? Not yet. Why? Because our investigation is not complete. The answer sounded official. The silence behind it did not. You intend to observe who attends and what is represented. I did not say that. You did not need to. I ended the call with a decision already forming. I would attend. Not to scream. Not to destroy furniture or throw wine. I had seen enough legal disputes ruined by people who confused spectacle with power. I would bring evidence. I would let everyone else decide what it meant. Friday night, I wore a black dress with long sleeves and a simple neckline. I had bought it for a charity dinner Ethan and I never attended because he claimed to be sick. I wondered now whether he had been with Sloane. That night too. Denise arrived at my house at 6:30 carrying 2 folders. The first contained copies of the financial records. The second contained the signed court order freezing the disputed accounts. You do not have to do this, she said. I know. Public exposure can become unpredictable. She made it public when she invited my colleagues. Then keep your objective narrow. The truth is narrow. Denise raised an eyebrow. The truth is usually the widest object in the room. Lucas was waiting in the hotel lobby. He looked older than he had 4 days earlier. Did you tell Rebecca? I asked. Yes. How did she respond? She said the fact that I was finally telling the truth did not erase the years I lied. She is right. I know. Are you still willing to speak? Yes. You understand this will affect your career and your reputation. Yes. And if you minimize your role, I will correct you in front of everyone. He nodded. I deserve that. The ballroom doors opened at 7:05. White flowers covered the tables. A champagne wall stood near the entrance. A large screen displayed photographs of Ethan and Sloane, walking beside the lake, laughing in a restaurant, holding a pair of tiny baby shoes. The final slide read, a new family. A new future. More than 70. People filled the room. Halcyon executives stood near the bar. Several of Ethan's regional directors were seated close to the stage. Maya stood beside Patricia Ross, whose expression revealed nothing. I recognized 3 partners from my firm. Sloane had invited them intentionally. She wanted the people who respected me professionally to witness my replacement personally. When I entered, the conversations nearest the door faded. Ethan saw me first. He was wearing a navy suit and no wedding ring. Sloane stood beside him in a pale gold dress, one hand resting on her stomach. She smiled. Claire, I did not expect you to come. That is why I came. Ethan stepped between us. This is not the place. You invited my law partners. I did not. Sloane's smile remained fixed. I thought mature people could support everyone moving forward. I looked around. The ballroom. You reserved a public audience. I assumed you wanted a public conversation. Her eyes moved to the folders in Denise's hands. What is that? A gift. The event coordinator approached the stage and announced that Ethan would make a toast. He touched Sloane's back and guided her toward the microphone. That familiar gesture no longer hurt. It looked rehearsed now. Ethan thanked the guests for attending. He spoke about unexpected chapters, courage, and the importance of choosing love even when life became complicated. He never used the word affair. He called the destruction of our marriage a complication. Then he looked at Sloane. She smiled up at him with tears shining in her eyes. For the first time in my life, Ethan said, I feel certain about where I belong. I walked toward the stage. The room shifted around me. Sloane noticed first. Her expression tightened. Claire, Ethan said into the microphone. I stopped below the stage. You invited people here to celebrate a future built with my money, your employer's money, and a baby whose father you have never verified. No one moved. Ethan's face lost color. Sloane's hand dropped from her stomach. "That is disgusting," she said. "How dare you question my child?" "I am not questioning your child. I am questioning you." Lucas stepped into the center aisle. Ethan stared at him. "What are you doing here?" Lucas looked at Sloane, then at Ethan. "Telling the truth too late." Sloane moved away from the microphone. "Do not do this." Lucas climbed onto the stage. I was involved with Sloane before she began seeing Ethan. The room erupted in whispers. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean involved?" "I mean we had an affair." Rebecca's name seemed to pass through the room without anyone saying it. Lucas continued. "It did not end when she told you it ended." Ethan turned toward Sloane. She shook her head quickly. "He is obsessed with me. He has been threatening me for months." Lucas took out his phone. "I brought the original messages." Sloane reached for the microphone. Denise signaled to the event technician. The screen changed. The photograph of the baby's shoes disappeared. The ultrasound image appeared in its place. Beneath it were Sloane's words. "Look at that forehead. Exactly like yours. Do not tell Ethan yet. I need time to decide which future makes the most sense." Ethan stared at the screen. Sloane's voice came through the ballroom speakers. "Ethan is stable. He wants the baby. Biology is not the only thing that makes someone a father. Let him believe what makes everyone's life easier." The recording ended. A glass struck the floor near the bar and shattered. Sloane grabbed Ethan's arm. "It is edited." Lucas unlocked his phone and held it up. "The original file is here. Full metadata. Full message thread." She looked toward the guests as if searching for someone willing to rescue her. No one moved. Ethan pulled his arm away. "When were you with him?" "Ethan, listen to me." "When?" "It was before us." Lucas answered. "The last time was around the possible conception date." Ethan stumbled back from her. For the first time, the powerful executive who could dominate a conference room with one look seemed unable to find enough air. Sloane pointed at me. "She planned this. She is trying to destroy us because you chose me." "No," I said. "You planned this event because you wanted witnesses." To my humiliation, I only changed what they witnessed. Patricia Ross stood. "Stop the presentation." Her voice carried across the room with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. For 1 second, Sloane looked relieved. Then Patricia turned toward the screen technician. "Open the second file I provided." Ethan stared at her. "What second file?" Patricia faced him. "The file showing how much of this celebration, this relationship, and Ms. Mercer's private business was paid for with money that did not belong to either of you." The second file opened with a spreadsheet. There were no dramatic photographs, no private messages, and no emotional recordings. There were dates, account numbers, approval codes, expense categories, and dollar amounts. In my experience, those were often far more dangerous. Patricia walked toward the stage. The guests moved aside for her. Sloane's face had gone completely still. Ethan looked from the spreadsheet to Patricia. "What is this?" "This is a preliminary summary of transactions identified during an internal compliance review." "You opened an investigation without speaking to me?" "We began preserving records after receiving credible evidence of undisclosed conflicts and improper expenses." He looked at me. "You reported." "Me. I provided documents relevant to my divorce," I said. "Your company decided what they meant." Patricia pointed toward the first group of charges. For resort stays were submitted as regional campaign planning sessions. Ms. Mercer was the only other attendee listed in the hotel records. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Work was performed during those trips. Then you will have an opportunity to produce the work product." Sloane stepped toward Patricia. "There were strategy discussions." "Where are the presentations?" "We spoke informally." "Where are the notes, schedules, campaign drafts, or follow-up emails?" Sloane looked toward Ethan. He could not help her. Patricia continued. "This ballroom was reserved using Halcyon's executive hospitality account and classified as an investor relations dinner." A low murmur spread through the room. Several guests who had been holding champagne glasses placed them on nearby tables. Ethan turned toward the event coordinator. "I told my assistant this was private." Patricia did not blink. "Your assistant has already provided the original request." "What did it say?" "It instructed her to describe the event as an investor dinner because the private event limit would have required additional approval." The words landed slowly. This was no longer a marital scandal. It was evidence of intent. Sloane's voice sharpened. "Ethan handled the reservation. I had nothing to do with it." Patricia looked at her. "You sent the guest list from your company email. You also requested reimbursement for floral arrangements under regional stakeholder engagement." Sloane glanced toward the towering white arrangements surrounding the stage. The flowers suddenly looked Less like decoration and more like evidence. Ethan stepped down from the stage. This is becoming inappropriate. We can discuss accounting issues privately. You chose to hold the event publicly, Patricia said. You also invited halcyon employees, vendors, and potential investors under a misleading business classification. Privacy is no longer solely your decision. He lowered his voice. I am your regional vice president. You are an employee under investigation. The room became silent again. Ethan had always depended on titles. Husband, executive, provider, future father. In less than 10 minutes, each title had been separated from the certainty he attached to it. He turned to me. What do you want, Claire? It was the same question he had asked whenever my resistance interfered with his plans. What do you want? As though fairness were a desire. As though the truth were a demand I had invented. I want you to stop pretending this happened to you. His face tightened. You knew nothing about the corporate expenses? I knew about the condominium deposit, the line of credit, Northline Ventures, and the payment to Sloane's company. Every executive in the ballroom seemed to focus at once. Patricia looked toward me. The payment was $96,000? Yes. Sloane interrupted. That was legitimate consulting income. For what work? Patricia asked. Healthcare branding. Performed for Northline Ventures? Yes. Patricia turned to Ethan. Northline was not disclosed in your annual conflict statement. It is not active. It borrowed against marital assets and transferred money to an employee under your authority. It was a personal investment vehicle. That is precisely why it required disclosure. Ethan looked at Sloane. You told me the consulting structure was legal. It is. You said outside counsel reviewed it. They did. Which counsel? She hesitated. The pause answered for her. I was going to have it reviewed. You told me it already was. Sloane's expression changed. Until then, she had directed most of her anger toward me and Lucas. Now some of it turned toward Ethan. Do not stand there pretending you were not involved. You created Northline to invest in private healthcare companies and to move money without Claire controlling every decision. Several people looked at me. I remained still. Ethan stepped closer to her. You said the money would be used for research. It was used to establish my consulting business. You bought a car. I needed transportation. You already had a car. You promised me security. The argument became intimate in the ugliest way. They were no longer protecting each other from the room. They were exposing each other to it. Sloane pointed toward me. She controlled every account, every property, every decision. You said you were tired of asking permission to use money you earned. I looked at Ethan. For months, he had described the hidden transfers as money needed for the baby. Now the truth appeared. The secrecy had begun before the pregnancy. Northline had not been created to support a child. It had been created to remove assets from my view. Ethan's attorney, who had been standing near the back of the room, approached him and whispered something. Ethan shook his head. No. I am not leaving. His attorney whispered again. Ethan ignored him and faced me. You make it sound criminal to want financial independence. Financial independence does not require a secret company funded by joint assets. I earned most of that money. And I supported your career while building my own. You always needed to be in control. I needed you to disclose transactions in a divorce. You froze everything. I froze the accounts you used to hide transfers. Sloane laughed bitterly. This is what she does, Ethan. She turns everything into an argument. She can win. I looked at her. You entered a relationship with a married executive, continued sleeping with his best friend, concealed uncertain paternity, accepted marital funds through a shell company, and charged your celebration to your employer. You are not losing an argument. You are encountering your own decisions. Her eyes flashed. You think you are better than me because you have a law degree and a house. No. I stepped closer. I think I behaved better than you. She looked as though I had struck her. People like Sloane expected judgment to arrive as jealousy. Jealousy could be dismissed as weakness. Accountability was harder. Lucas stood near the edge of the stage, pale but steady. Ethan turned toward him. How long? Lucas did not pretend to misunderstand. 7 months before she became involved with you. Then 2 times afterward. You were my best friend. I know. You stood in my wedding. I know. You came to my house. I know. Ethan shoved him. Lucas stumbled backward into a chair. Several people moved forward, but Lucas raised one hand. Do not touch him. Ethan tried to advance again. Patricia's security director stepped between them. Mr. Caldwell, stop. Ethan's chest rose and fell. You let me believe the baby was mine. Lucas's voice broke. I was afraid. You were afraid? Yes. I left my wife. You chose to leave Claire before I told you anything. The words stopped Ethan. Lucas continued. I should have told you. I should have told Rebecca. I should have told Claire when I realized the timelines overlapped. I failed all of you. Sloane stared at him. Do not make yourself noble. I am not. You wanted me to leave Ethan. I wanted the truth. You wanted access to the baby. If the baby is mine, I have a responsibility. You have no idea what responsibility means. Rebecca's voice came from the back of the ballroom. Neither do you. Every head turned. Lucas froze. Rebecca Grant stood near the doors in a dark green coat. She looked tired, composed, and completely uninterested in spectacle. Lucas whispered her name. I told you not to contact me tonight, she said. I did not. I came because Patricia called. Patricia gave a slight nod. Rebecca was a physician who had served as a medical advisor to Halcyon. Her professional connection explained the invitation. Her personal connection changed the room. Sloane stepped back. Rebecca looked at Lucas. You told them? Yes. All of it? Yes. Including the hotel trips during our separation? Yes. And the trips before I moved out? Lucas closed his eyes. Yes. That was another truth he had not given me in the coffee shop. He and Rebecca had not been fully separated when the affair began. She nodded once, absorbing the confirmation she had probably expected. Then she looked at Sloane. I am not here to compete with you. I am not here to defend him. I came because if a child may be involved, every adult needs to stop using uncertainty as a weapon. Sloane touched her stomach. This stress is dangerous. Rebecca's expression remained calm. Then leave, contact your physician, and arrange proper testing through counsel. But do not invoke the baby every time someone asks you a question. For the first time that evening, Sloane seemed unable to produce an answer. Her hand remained over her stomach. I wondered whether she truly loved the child. I believed she did, in whatever way she understood love. That made the situation sadder, not simpler. A child was coming into the world surrounded by adults who had treated truth as something negotiable. Patricia addressed Ethan and Sloane. Effective immediately, both of you are placed on administrative leave pending investigation. You are not permitted to access Halcyon systems, facilities, or records. Ethan stared at her. You cannot suspend me in front of my team. I can suspend you wherever I locate you after determining that company funds and employees may be at risk. I built the Midwest division. You were paid to build it. I delivered 4 years of record growth. And that performance will be considered alongside your conduct. Sloane looked around the room. You are all enjoying this. No one answered. She focused on me. This is what you wanted. You wanted to humiliate me. I wanted you to stop humiliating me. You could have handled this privately. You invited my partners to watch you celebrate with my husband. You did not have to come. No. I chose to. Her voice shook. You are jealous because I am giving him what you could not. The sentence was crueler than anything else she had said, because it reached for the oldest wound again. But it no longer controlled me. I looked at Ethan. He lowered his eyes. Then I looked back at Sloane. I believed losing those pregnancies made me less complete. Ethan knew that. Instead of protecting the wound, he shared it with you. You used it because you thought motherhood made you untouchable. Her expression changed slightly. Not remorse. Uncertainty. I would never blame your child for the circumstances of conception, I continued. But carrying a child does not erase what you have done to other people. It does not make cruelty maternal. It does not make theft security. It does not turn lies into a family. Sloane's eyes filled with tears. She grabbed her purse from the table. I am leaving. Patricia's security director stepped aside. No one is preventing you. Sloane stopped near the stage. What about the files? You will surrender your company laptop and access card before exiting. This is unbelievable. No, Patricia said. It is documented. Sloane removed the access badge clipped inside her purse and threw it onto the table. Then she walked out without looking at Ethan. He did not follow her. That surprised everyone, including him. For months, he had chosen her every time the choice cost me something. When the cost became his own, he stood still. The ballroom began to empty. Some guests left quickly, embarrassed by how much they had witnessed. Others lingered near Patricia, offering information or asking whether they should preserve emails. My law partners approached me. The senior partner, Martin Ellis, looked at Denise's folders. Do you need the firm involved? No, are you sure? Yes. He studied me for a moment. You handled yourself well. I should never have needed to. No. He nodded. You should not have. Maya hugged me without asking. I nearly collapsed when she did. Not because I was weak. Because it was the first contact that evening that did not demand anything. When she released me, Denise handed Ethan's attorney a sealed envelope. Ethan watched. What is that? Service copies of the amended divorce petition, the financial preservation order, and discovery requests concerning Northline Ventures, Denise said. You served me at this party? The original documents were delivered to your residence this afternoon. These are courtesy copies. For the first time that night, I smiled. Not because I enjoyed his humiliation. Because his attempts to outmaneuver me had ended. He had expected the party to certify his new life before our old one had been legally dismantled. Instead, he left with the first complete description of what dismantling it would cost. Ethan waited until almost everyone was gone before approaching me. The screen behind him was blank. The flowers remained. The pair of baby shoes sat abandoned near the microphone. Claire. I looked at him. His face seemed older. I did not know about Lucas. I believe you. I thought the baby was mine. I know. I love that child. The child still exists. He flinched. I do not know what I am supposed to do. You wait for the truth. And if the baby is not mine? That is between you, Sloane, and the person who is. He looked toward the ballroom doors. I destroyed our marriage for a lie. No, his eyes returned to me. You destroyed our marriage with your own lies. Her lies only destroyed the future you expected to receive in exchange. He pressed his lips together. I was unhappy. You were entitled to be unhappy. I felt invisible. You were entitled to feel invisible. I felt like nothing I did was enough for you. You were entitled to tell me. His voice became raw. Why can you not admit we were broken before Sloane? Because being imperfect is not the same as being broken. We barely spoke some nights. We worked too much. You did not want to try again after the miscarriages. I could not survive another loss. I wanted a family. So did I. You buried yourself in work. So did you. At least she made me feel wanted. I let the words settle. There it was. Not love. Not destiny. Not an uncontrollable connection. Admiration. Sloane had looked at Ethan as though success made him extraordinary. I had known him before the title, before the stock, before the tailored suits and hotel upgrades. I knew which stories he repeated, which decisions frightened him, and how quickly confidence disappeared when praise stopped. Being known had begun to feel less exciting than being worshipped. You did not want a new life, I said. You wanted a version of yourself that never had to feel ordinary. He looked away. I am sorry. I believe you are sorry now. I was sorry before. You were sorry that I was hurt. You were not sorry enough to stop hurting me. Can we talk after this settles? About the divorce, through our attorneys. I mean about us. There is no us. You cannot know that. Ida. His eyes filled. The sight moved me, but it did not change me. That was the difference between compassion and surrender. I made a catastrophic mistake, he said. You made a series of choices. People come back from worse. Maybe you will. With you? No, he stared at me as though rejection had never seemed possible until that moment. What if I do everything right now? You cannot use good behavior as a time machine. I will leave Halcyon. I will sell the condo. I will return every dollar. You should return the money because it is not yours. You should cooperate with Halcyon because you owe them the truth. You should deal honestly with Sloane because a child is involved. I picked up my coat. None of those things purchases me. He reached for my hand, then stopped before touching it. Claire, please. Do not come back to me because the person you chose became unsafe. That is not what this is. It is exactly what this is. He lowered his head. For 9 years, I had been his certainty. Sloane had been his excitement. Now that excitement had collapsed, he wanted certainty returned. But I was not a house he could enter after another shelter burned down. Lucas was waiting near the lobby elevators. Rebecca stood several feet away from him. They were not speaking. When I approached, Lucas looked at me. I am sorry I did not tell you everything at the coffee shop. You told me enough to protect yourself. He accepted the accusation. I am going to petition for testing. Do it through counsel. I will. If the baby is yours, do not punish the child for the way this began. I will not. And do not use fatherhood as evidence that you have changed. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? Changing is what you do consistently when no one is applauding. Signing papers and posting photographs will be the easy part. Rebecca looked at me. That is true. Lucas nodded. I understand. No, Rebecca said. You understand the sentence. The rest will take years. The elevator arrived. Rebecca stepped inside alone. Lucas did not follow. I drove home through streets glazed with ice. When I opened the front door, Walter and June came running. June pressed her body against my legs. Walter barked until I sat on the floor and allowed him to climb halfway into my lap, despite being far too large. I buried my face in his fur. That was when I cried. Not at the mediation. Not when I heard Sloane's recording. Not when Patricia suspended Ethan. I cried on the hardwood floor while two rescue dogs leaned against me as if their bodies could hold together every part that had finally become too tired to remain composed. I cried for the pregnancies I had lost. I cried for the years I had spent believing endurance was the same as devotion. I cried for the woman who had smelled perfume on her husband's shirt and apologized for asking questions. Then I made tea, removed the wedding photograph from the kitchen, and slept for 9 hours. The weeks that followed were quieter than the party and more consequential. Halcyon's investigation found that Ethan had approved Sloane's promotion without disclosing their relationship. It also found improper expense classifications, misuse of executive hospitality funds, and outside payments that created a direct conflict of interest. Sloane claimed she had believed Ethan's assistant handled the appropriate approvals. Emails showed otherwise. She resigned before Halcyon completed the disciplinary process. Ethan was offered the option to resign instead of being terminated for cause. He accepted. The company required repayment of more than $47,000 in personal expenses. The Northline transaction became part of our divorce discovery. Under court supervision, Sloane returned $61,000 that remained in her business account. The rest had been spent on a vehicle, furniture for the condominium, travel, and luxury purchases. Ethan's share of the marital estate was reduced to account for the dissipated assets. I kept the Lincoln Park house temporarily, then decided I did not want it. Every room held a version of me waiting for someone to come home. We sold it. I purchased a smaller house in Evanston with a fenced yard for Walter and June, a sunroom facing the lake, and a kitchen that filled with light before 7 o'clock in the morning. The divorce was finalized 8 months after the hotel party. Ethan did not receive the outcome he had proposed. The company stock earned during our marriage was divided. The hidden transfers were charged against his share. The West Loop condominium contract was terminated after the court refused to release frozen funds for closing. He moved to Columbus and accepted a position with a smaller medical distributor. I heard he stopped wearing the silver watch. Sloane gave birth to a girl named Ivy. The paternity test confirmed that Lucas was the biological father. Ethan requested a second test before accepting the result. Afterward, he sent me one message. "You were right about everything." I deleted it. I had not wanted to be right. Lucas acknowledged paternity, established support, and began traveling to Chicago twice a month after Sloane moved back to Colorado to live near her mother. Rebecca completed the divorce she had postponed for too long. She and I met for coffee once. We did not become close friends. Shared betrayal does not automatically create friendship. But we understood each other. She told me Lucas was trying to become a reliable father. "I hope he succeeds," I said. "So do I. For the child. Not for him." Sloane contacted me one time through an attorney. She wanted me to sign a confidentiality agreement promising not to discuss the hotel event or the financial records publicly. I refused. I had no intention of telling the story to reporters or posting it online, but I would not allow her to purchase silence she could later describe as innocence. My attorney sent one response. "Ms. Bennett will comply with all existing legal confidentiality obligations. She will not agree to additional restrictions." Sloane never asked again. A year after the divorce, Maya invited me to speak to a group of young women entering corporate law. The original topic was professional resilience. I talked about dignity instead. I told them that intelligence would not protect them from loving someone dishonest. Success would not prevent them from doubting themselves. Strength would not mean they never tolerated too much. I told them the most dangerous lies were not always told by other people. Sometimes the lie was, "He is stressed. She is only a coworker. I should not overreact. A good marriage requires sacrifice. If I become easier to love, he will become honest again." I told them dignity was not dramatic. It was often a quiet decision made before anyone else understood its importance. It was reading the document before signing. It was asking the second question. It was leaving the room without winning the argument. It was refusing to reopen a door simply because the person outside finally understood what he had lost. After the talk, a young associate approached me. "Did you forgive your husband?" People asked that often. They expected forgiveness to be the final proof that I had healed. "I stopped wishing for his destruction," I said. "That was enough for me." "But would you ever speak to him again?" "I speak to him when legal or practical matters require it." That does not sound like forgiveness. Forgiveness does not always mean access. She considered that. I continued. Sometimes, forgiveness means you no longer carry the fire. It does not mean you invite the person who started it back into your house. The last time I saw Ethan was at a coffee shop in Evanston nearly 2 years after the mediation. I was seated near the window reading a contract when he walked in. He looked thinner. His hair had more gray. He wore an inexpensive coat I had never seen before. He noticed me while waiting for his order. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he approached. "Claire." "Ethan. You look good." "So do you." It was not entirely true, but cruelty was no longer necessary. He asked about Walter and June. I showed him a photograph of them sleeping in the sunroom. His expression softened. "I miss them. They are doing well. I heard you made partner." "Yes. Congratulations." "Thank you." He looked toward the empty chair across from me. "Can I sit?" "I only have a few minutes." He sat. For a while, we discussed ordinary things. His work. My house. His mother's health. The kind of subjects two people use when they once knew everything about each other and now have no right to ask personal questions. Then he said, "I saw a photograph of Ivy." I waited. "She looks like Lucas." "I have not seen her." "Sloane sends updates occasionally." "You stayed in contact?" "For a while." He turned his coffee cup between his hands. I thought I could still be part of the baby's life. I had spent months imagining her as my daughter. What happened? Sloane did not want the complication. Lucas did not trust my motives. Eventually, I realized I was trying to hold on to the only part of that future that had not deliberately betrayed me. "The child did not betray you." "I know." His voice lowered. "That is why I stepped away before my grief became her burden." For the first time in years, I saw evidence that Ethan might have learned something. It did not make me want him back. It made me hope he would become less harmful to the next person who trusted him. "I am sorry," he said. "Not because Sloane lied. Not because I lost my job. I am sorry for what I did before any of that happened." I looked at him. He continued. "I made you question your instincts. I told private things about you so I could make myself look wounded. I took money and called it independence. I tried to pressure you into accepting less because I wanted my new life to begin without consequences." His eyes were wet. "I understand now that even if Sloane had loved me completely, even if the baby had been mine, even if Halcyon had never investigated, I still would have been wrong." That was the apology I had once believed I needed. Hearing it did not repair the past. It simply placed the truth where the excuse had been. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "Do you forgive me? I no longer need you to suffer." "Is that forgiveness?" "It is the version I have." He nodded. "Is there any version of the future where we could try again?" "No," the answer came without anger. He looked down. "I thought you might say that. You did not ask because you believed the answer had changed. You asked because you needed to know." "Yes." I closed my laptop. "You once told me you felt invisible in our marriage." "I did. I have thought about that. I know there were times I did not see you clearly." He looked up. "But being unseen does not justify becoming dishonest," I said. "And being sorry does not require me to become your wife again." "I understand." This time, I believed he did. We walked outside together. Snow had begun falling over the street, light enough to disappear when it touched the pavement. At the corner, Ethan stopped. "You really are different." I shook my head. "No. I finally stopped negotiating against myself." Then I crossed the street. Walter and June were waiting at home. The sunroom lights were on. A case file sat unfinished on my desk. Flowers I had bought for myself rested in a blue vase near the window. My life was smaller than the one Ethan and I had planned. Smaller house. Fewer formal dinners. No husband. No carefully staged holiday photographs. Yet it belonged entirely to me. I no longer checked anyone else's schedule before making plans. I no longer slept with a phone in my hand. I no longer treated peace as the temporary space between suspicions. For a long time, I thought my story ended when my husband chose another woman. It did not. It began when I understood that his choice did not determine my value. Sloane believed pregnancy made her the winner. Ethan believed money and status would protect him from consequences. Lucas believed delayed honesty could erase cowardice. All three were wrong. The baby was not a prize. The marriage was not a competition. And revenge was not the moment their lies became public. My real revenge was quieter. I kept my name. I kept my career. I kept the life I had nearly surrendered to make dishonest people comfortable. Most importantly, I kept the part of myself they had tried to convince me was too cold, too ambitious, too established, and too difficult to love. That woman was never the problem. She was the person who eventually saved me.